I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we start with the consent agenda. First up is approve the board minutes from June 17th. Approve a gambling permit for Stewartville Sportsman's Club. Approve a gambling permit for a raffle event for Stewartville Sportsman's Club. Approve a gambling permit for Rochester Area Builders. Accept Community Living Infrastructure Grant Award. Approve amended DNR agreement. Approve and adopt amendments to the Joint Powers Agreement for the Region 1 Southeast Minnesota Homeland Security and Emergency Management Joint Powers Entity. Award a contract for C25-02, C25-22, County State Aid Highway 2 and 22. Adoption of recent fee changes to state well core function fees as directed by Minnesota Department of Health.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Discussion decision items. First up is award contracts for construction of the exhibition center.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Miller, Director of Facilities and Building Operations. So hopefully your packet was pretty self-explanatory, but in front of you tonight is consideration of 3 prime contract bids for the exhibition center. So we used a best value process for this solicitation, and what that allows us to do is evaluate contractors or vendors on more than just price. So in a normal bid process, you have to take the lowest responsible bid. So this is a process we've used on other projects, and we find that it actually gives us a better product in the end. So price is a component of the evaluation, but it's not the entire number of points that can be earned. So if you award it tonight, we're hoping to do a groundbreaking in the next couple weeks. And then just a reminder on the construction schedule is once we start construction in a couple weeks, we plan to be done by January 1st or around the 1st of 2027. And what we've done is we've created some interim milestones into the project so that places like the activity pad, program support plaza can be ready for the 2026 fair. Unfortunately, the exhibition center won't be ready before the 2026 fair, so it's going to create some challenges for planning next year's fair, but we're trying to be as thoughtful as possible to give them as much area as they can without having the exhibition center, obviously. So be happy to answer any questions that you do have.
No questions. Okay. All right. So then we're looking for a motion if there's no questions.
Is, just a point of order, is a motion to approve all 3 contracts as outlined in our board packet?
Exactly, yep. So it's 3 separate contracts. 1A is for general construction, 2A is for mechanical, and 3A is for electrical.
I would move to approve 1A,
2A and
2A, and 3A contracts.
All right, and second. All right, we got a motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving right along. Informational items. City of Rochester update from Administrator Allison Zelms. Welcome, Allison.
That's right. We've saved time for a long presentation. Thank you for having me, Chair Tyne, Commissioners. I am having a little bit of deja vu because I'm pretty sure the last time I was here providing city updates, Director Miller had an item before me, and then I was up, and Commissioner Senjum also wasn't here. So I picked the right meeting again, I guess, or we've just planned it that way. So I'm glad to be here. What is in your packet is longer than what you're hoping for. I did get a little update from Administrator Grancy. He said 5 minutes of stand-up comedy, 5 minutes of city, 20 minutes of questions. So we're going to go for that.
All right.
But with that, I'm glad to be here. There's a lot going on in the city of Rochester, all of which is in Olmsted County. So thank you for your support in advance. But we do have a new complement. Really not that new anymore. We're in the second half of the first year of this cohort of elected officials. So have made some progress on some different items that predated them joining the city council, much like your previous item that you just had. Ours take a little bit longer sometimes than that. But this is the group of people who I work with in order to make sure that we're advancing as a community. So obviously elected by ward, throughout the city and continue to do good work together as a city council with Mayor Norton serving in her role as well. So just a couple of things. We completed our 2024 community survey, similarly to Olmsted County. Came out similar results that we did in the prior community survey. So grateful that folks generally appreciate living here, plan to remain, and feel a good sense of security in the city of Rochester. Obviously, we'd love to have that be 100%. Very rare on a community survey that you get 100%, but we always hope to be in those higher categories and making sure that people feel supported in the city. You might remember also that we had set some strategic priorities, but with the newly elected, or I guess well-grizzled, 7 months in, elected officials for the city of Rochester, one of the first things that they took on was updating their strategic priorities. And so we went from having these 3 high-level strategic priorities of affordable living, economic vibrancy and growth management, and quality services, and updated those and the graphic to be able to update our community vision, which is at the top, what we're trying to accomplish with the strategic priorities. And you can see those really kind of came into 5 different areas of strategic priorities that are not dissimilar from the other 3, but are a little bit more focused than what had been adopted prior. And then we did update the foundational principles and moved quality services into a foundational principle and added inclusive decision-making into our foundational principles. So those were some of the tweaks that were made by the city council, and they approved that 2 meetings ago, I believe. And then this just gives you a little bit more clarity on what do those 5 sets of words mean. So we're trying to foster a dynamic economy, making sure we're promoting policies that support access to a range of types of housing, growth that is responsible, balancing economic development and infrastructure planning, and then obviously wanting to protect our natural resources and making sure that the community is also aware of the role that they can play in that. And a lot of what I'm going to focus on is the transformational capital projects. We're in the delivery stage of a lot of planning that has gone on since before my time as city administrator, and we'll have a bit of time ahead of us before they are fully complete. So since you all live and travel through this area, I had quite a commute here down the hall, free of all construction if you just walk down the hall between the 2 areas. And so that was wonderful. But we are trying to also support that private and public development. So I'm sure that you were following when the update happened to the Unified Development Code from the former Land Development Code that had been in place for about 20 years. So we think about that housing. What we have tried to do is make as many options available to folks that are having housing production as part of their private goals of their business. We have the smallest lot size available in our city cohort. The lot width is one of the lowest, the front and side setbacks as well as the back setback. So trying to provide opportunities for a different type of housing product. And of course, we had a lot of other updates that happened with the Unified Development Code with how approvals happen within the development community and have had a lot of positive feedback. Continuing to have those discussions with the city council about parking minimums and things of that nature, especially in the more urban core of the city. And you can see that with some of the changes that we made to the land development manual, we've seen an increase in the number of neighborhood information meetings. So those first sets of meetings that happen between the developer when they're still vetting their idea, and a decrease in the number of times they have to come to the elected body for approvals. So less red tape to get to the end of their project. There's still public hearings required for key changes that are critical for zoning or annexation or things of that nature. But as long as the builder is building in accordance with everything that's laid out in the very large uniform development code, and they've met those key public hearing milestones, they don't have to keep coming back to the elected body for those approvals. So you can see it's markedly down in the number of approvals that are just happening at a staff level in accordance with meeting the requirements of the Unified Development Code. So we're hopeful that will mean a larger number of housing starts particularly. Obviously, that's not the only thing that's covered in the Unified Development Code, but it aligns with our strategic priorities. And you can also see that the value of permits has continued to increase, and we had our record year in 2024, almost breaching $700 million of new construction. And that requires a significant amount of work for us to keep delivering those in the 2-week time frame for residential and a 3 to 4 week time frame for some of the more complex commercial projects. Surprise, we're still in the midst of having Mayo Bowl Forward Unbound in the city of Rochester and Olmsted County. And I still come across folks that I talk to about this, and it's, I think, for a place like Olmsted County and Rochester, we don't realize how big this is. The city for it proper is about 125,000 people, and all of those other projects are happening in cities that are much larger than the city of Rochester, except for the far left of that slide, which was the 2023 year of building permit fees, which was smaller than 2024. So we still have all of those building permits coming in from across both Mayo Clinic and other private development, plus we have this very large mega project that we're working through that covers 22 blocks of downtown. So we appreciate everybody's patience as we work together with our partners through that. We have been working really hard to try to make sure that there's communication available for folks. So if you're interested in what's happening, we update this website all the time, downtownrochesterconstruction.org. It tries to bring together the Mayo projects, DMC projects, and City of Rochester projects that are all happening downtown. And we're hopeful that we can prototype this and then build it out potentially for like our 6-year capital improvement plan, so we can be coordinating better with our partners. We are not doing the mill and overlay on Highway 14. Thank you to our partners at MnDOT for doing that, but we are not the only people that are causing construction delays in the city of Rochester and Olmsted County. But we do have these guiding principles, and they align, I think, fairly well with the strategic priorities that the council established. So we want to have the best experience possible throughout construction, make sure we keep connectivity going as much as possible, even when we have different ways that people are connecting. Obviously, that communication engagement, not just with the commuting public, but with the business and other entities that are impacted, making sure that we do elevate the experience around construction. So while it might be construction, hopefully folks are able to see what they're supporting by maybe waiting a little bit longer in what will be in that place in the future. And then maximizing our opportunities to make sure that we're digging once and looking to, the next 20 years, not the next 5 years. Which means there's going to be a lot happening, and a lot of it's underground. So if you were to visit that website, you can see that there's a 2-week forecast that's there on the bottom if you're wanting to kind of look ahead. And we are trying, obviously, weather is not always our friend in the 2-week forecast, or the 2-week recap, of what has happened, so people can understand what has occurred. And then you can, in there, understand like what has been behind us. So just to get a sense of what's happening on the project. And then you can also, every Friday, see there's this 1-pager that tries to give you the road impacts and different impacts that are coming for the next week. So it also highlights different collaboration and successes that we've made and milestones in the projects that are impacting mostly downtown. And then there's also a set of sections where you can go into a virtual map. So if not everyone's into a virtual map, some people like to get the PDF, and that's great. But looking at street maps, pedestrian maps, and bicycle maps, so depending on how you commute downtown or how your family or friends do, you will be able to see the near-term impacts to those different parts of the downtown area. So just recommend that if you're interested in following that, to head to that website. We update those printable maps every Friday, and the virtual map is updated anytime needs to be a change to the virtual map. Thank you to our friends at Geographic Information Systems. And then again, we have a splash page, so it's going to tell you major things that are coming forward. So when you land there, if there's something big forthcoming, you're not going to have to click to find it. It is just right there on the splash page to tell you what's forthcoming. We don't just do construction downtown. We still have events and other things that are also hoping to bring people downtown. Thursdays has been pretty busy. And we're grateful to have that. So we also have these in-person engagement activities, and those are also listed on the website for folks to be able to understand different phases of construction and what it might mean to them. And that is something that we do closely work with our partners at the Rochester Downtown Association, Mayo Clinic, obviously, Destination Medical Center, City of Rochester, and others. So that's all to try to bring many transformational investments. And our investments are not just in the projects that are underway now. So you can see some of these are, I would say Soldiers Field is done, except now we have a duct bank project happening and being finalized in front of it. So the construction that's happening in front of Soldiers Field right now on 6th Street is actually the finalization of the Marion Road duct bank to be able to increase electric service. That is Rochester Public Utilities. And so we're getting very close to be done there, but Soldiers Field is open for business. Just have to get there a little bit differently. We also have, obviously, Link Rapid Transit that just started mid-June. That will be ongoing, connecting to West Transit Village, which started moving dirt for the parking and the first phases of that about a month before. We have the 4th Street Southeast and 19th Avenue Southeast Roundabout in front of Olmsted Medical forthcoming, and the contract award for that is on the agenda for this coming Monday for the City Council. That is a partially federally funded project, and we are confirmed that we will be awarded those funds. 6th Street Riverfront, that is going to be starting to get underway here over the next 18 months. We're working through exactly how that will come out of the ground. That is also primarily federally funded. And so between the bridge and what most of this project is are the road improvements down 6th Street. That will be forthcoming. We're active on the McQuillan Splash Pad project. And you can see Silver Lake Park underway. And there's also a public meeting coming up that will include not just that, but also the changes that have been continuing for Silver Lake, the lake. We have an award that we are working through with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park to make enhancements to that park as well. And then obviously a number of different things on the riverfront that are taking place at a little bit different pace than we had anticipated in the past. And we will have Willow Creek Trail coming to fruition here over the next 18 months. So a lot happening all around the city of Rochester, and this isn't all of the projects, but it's some of the projects. So we are trying to make sure that we're investing not just in the downtown, but across the entire community for folks who are interested in different things. What this looks like when you think about all of these projects layered on top of each other and the amazing work that's happening for the Rochester City team is that we have all of these different construction timelines. So this is what we're trying to coordinate when we're talking about that community engagement, the maps, all of those things. So this is just sort of those downtown DMC district area projects, including a little bit up North Broadway. And it continues on. You need a long scroll in order to look at them all at once. Some of the private investment with the Mayo Clinic Bold Forward Unbound project. So there are private facilities that are going in and impacting some of those areas. Some strategic redevelopment that's happening. Again, private investment that will be forthcoming. And the South Broadway planning, we would be in planning of that in hopes to be in construction for South Broadway in the future there in about 2 to 3 years. And then, of course, we move forward to 6th Avenue. We're installing a Civic Center marquee. And you move forward to, this is the really logistical masterpiece that is happening. So if you look at Unbound infrastructure, that's the 22 square blocks of water, sewer, electric, stormwater, and other things that will happen underground, but impact above ground for a significant period of time that are also continuing to work through to try to get that done as quickly as possible with coordination with the private sector. And then this is all of the other projects, longer list than I could put in pictures on the prior slide, that's across the rest of the city of Rochester that are of a transformational size for the size of project, the dollar amount, or the impact that it would have to the operation that it's supporting. So we're basically under construction. Again, this continues here. And this is a repeat, so we can skip this slide. But all of this is really to try to, we talk about these projects in government often at the city, like project by project, or, line by line on the Gantt chart. But if you think about how they spread across the community and how different that can be, rather than having vacant parking lots, for example, this is the AMP site, and some of the great work that happened with the small area plan, and that was 5-6 years ago. But as we've continued to work through the 6th Street design, you see a very 2D bridge there, the 6th Street Bridge, on the upper left photograph that's intended to support additional development in that area. As we've gone through the community design process, this is the artist's rendering of what a bridge would actually potentially look like as what we've got designed for that street project right now. So it's separated the people from the traffic. It provides overlook. It has opportunities for shade and being able to be seated and take a break. And you can see the phase 2 that if we're able to move forward with more of the grading and different aspects that approach the river and the river walk to the sides, that isn't currently scoped out to be as significant of an artist's rendering result as is in this scope of work here today. So the phase 1 really is primarily focusing on some smaller connections to the trail system and improving those at the edges of the roadway and bridge. But I guess I would just say, like, we have been designing this project for 4 to 5 years, and it changes sometimes significantly in how people will experience it when we move through that stage of the process. So we talk about it as 6th Street Bridge, but what we've been moving through with community engagement is really changing the feel of that so that it's not just for vehicular traffic, but is trying to connect people who often are walking in this general area in a different way to the core of the city through to the neighborhood on the other side in Sunnyside. And so this is sort of like 15 years from now, what we hope to be able to be bringing to folks between those public investments that are going to bridge the river, literally, and provide different public amenities and inspire private investment to be able to connect those between having a different experience of city streets, sidewalks, trails, et cetera, and the different private development that can happen there. One of those things is Link Rapid Transit, which is going to be a very different type of service between West Transit Village and its terminus on the east side and in between. So it will operate for far more hours of the day than the traditional bus service would. So 5 a.m. to midnight on weekdays, which is a large extension in hours, and then 8 a.m. to midnight on the weekends. Fare-free every 5 minutes. So it's really getting you around that area once you either can walk in if you are a downtown liver, or if you are getting downtown and wanting to go to your meetings and not have to hop in a car, but be maybe not walk the whole, maybe walk one way and take the transit back. That would be an opportunity for folks. So that's what's happening along 2nd Avenue right now and well underway. So that is a different experience for people to connect across from West Transit Village down to the waterfront area there and back and be able to experience those businesses and the different types of living opportunities that are at least underway and planned for through some of their planning processes. You may see yourselves in this photo. There is the Government Center. This is a future idea for use of the sites that are owned by the city. Thank you for your partnership on the Mr. Muffler. It's still there, so we're not building this yet. But again, all of those different improvements provide a different opportunity to have a private partner see how they might be able to use that space differently for additional housing opportunities that isn't just housing, but housing that's connected to all of the different amenities that are available in a walkable distance or a quick hop onto Link Rapid Transit and then to the broader transit system. Here's an example of, probably you've seen this too many times, Commissioner Tyne, but of the Girard project, partially funded with some funding from Destination Medical Center. But again, not just thinking about, okay, how can we support private investment to gain housing, but in doing so, is there a way to make sure that there is additional connectivity in an area that's quite a mega block and having green space that didn't exist before in that area? And in this case, it would be supported by some public funding, but in perpetuity be maintained for the public by that housing, the management of that housing project. So it won't look exactly like this. Artists love to put fun artwork. It will probably be some other different type of artwork, but artwork nonetheless. So just again, another example along that corridor of what can get inspired by different private investment when they see investment happening from the public sector. And then, of course, sales tax, continuing to work on those projects. We've had a fair amount of investment in economic vitality to try to get not just housing starts, but really compress the amount of time and shorten the amount of time that some of these developers have to produce the single-family housing to try to influence the market more swiftly. Street reconstruction, we have our first projects planned for in our capital improvement plan that'll be coming forward for adoption later this year. Flood control and water quality, we just received an update from our stormwater folks yesterday about the needs to think about how much of our stormwater system that we're changing some of our requirements might benefit and have sort of a symbiosis with the flood control system for holding water back, and 2 funding sources there for things that really are flood control and maybe also impact the stormwater system and vice versa if we're going farther upstream or out into the watershed. And then the Regional Sports and Recreation Complex. So again, the Economic Vitality Fund really focused on the housing creation and the fee waiver, tax abatement, and infrastructure investment, which has been some of the constraint, is that if infrastructure is not available, that can be a costly expense for the developer and can really free up available green space for future development in the near term. And then looking at the preservation of existing naturally occurring affordable housing with those tax abatement and fee waivers, and supporting housing rehabilitation in that space. This is a slide you've probably seen before, but last week we looked at the most current schematic design, and the City Council advanced that sports complex that's focused on the outdoor tournament level, but with community features that will be accessible. You can see the Willow Creek Trail connecting down from the middle of the city down to the southeast around the complex to the east of the site, and some additional supportive features. You would be surprised how expensive these things are, although you just approved the exhibition center, so maybe that won't surprise you. But that's what we've been working towards over the last 9 months in order to be able to adjust things and move around some of the opportunities. The play area is designed to be a turf play area, so it'll be able to be used after inclement weather very quickly by families. And then you can see in the sort of like north center area, the tournament level pickleball court area. So we're still on our timeline. It has been a lot of work to stay on this timeline to be able to move forward and hopefully get to construction starting later this year with the complex. And I think I might have done it. It's not that long of a presentation, but I could make it longer.
It was action-packed, I'll give you that.
There you go. And that was just one little thing. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Really appreciate the support that and the conversations we have with administration and others in the county team. And yeah.
Questions, comments? Bob?
I have a lot.
Okay, I'm ready. We saved time for questions. That was the suggestion.
One is notifications about traffic patterns. It's helpful, the signage that you've been putting up, because a lot of that traffic is diverted into my district off of 2nd. And so a lot of people, and it's commendable that you're utilizing the website and so on to communicate some of those changes. A lot of people, particularly foreign visitors coming into the city, probably aren't going to get to that website. But it would be helpful on top of the signage that's already there. I mean, what I've seen is when you come off 2nd and you turn up to 6th, and you see signs to Damon and Gonda and Baldwin and all these other buildings, it's very, very helpful. What I haven't seen is some kind of messaging like you see on highways that would say what's coming up. Be aware next week, closures here, here, here.
So like the vertical message boards that like gives you a little more space to.
Right. And even as you're coming into town off, 52 on Civic Center or, on 6th or whatever, there are very common exit points to get to Mayo Clinic.
That maybe aren't as pleasant right now.
Huh?
That maybe you wouldn't pick if you knew that there was construction on it
Well,
right
not
now.
necessarily. I'm saying, since they are popular, I mean, that's where people are going to see the signage, right, on a regular basis. So all I'm saying is that give people a heads up, right?
Yeah, I can give that feedback to the team.
And I don't know if that's Mayo that would need to hear that, or if it's the city that's doing that, or
You would be shocked at how many meetings happen each week, so they will hear all of it if I share with one.
right.
And so then it would be also coordinating with MnDOT if it's on that 52 corridor and making sure that we might be able to see if we could utilize some of their signage more in advance.
I don't think it's a huge ask because, I mean, it's common standard transportation practice to give people a heads up as to what closures might be coming and where backups may occur, right? So the wayfinding is really helpful, but that next step is anticipating
Further out.
further out.
Yep.
So that people can know.
Helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so the other thing is one of the strategic priorities was inclusive development, right? Does that inclusiveness include, working with the county?
I don't remember what it actually says, so I have to go back. It's still new to me. Apologies.
Kind of a big one.
Inclusive growth management. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's intended to be thinking about is our infrastructure now, where is it headed, and understanding how to balance those things, recognizing that we tend to plan far ahead for some of those significant, primarily utility investments, and understanding how to balance, like, do we really want to spend $40 million to extend something to a certain area, or which areas are we focusing on? Because we can't spend $1 billion and focus in all directions. But we've just developed this, and we're still working on the detailed tactics and action plan that would be within there.
Okay. I guess my point is that, the sports complex is one good example. I don't know to what extent the county was consulted, involved, whatever, but I mean, it's a huge investment for the city. It has implications for the county. And there may be opportunities for resource sharing or, working together on certain projects if we're informed. And my understanding is that there isn't a lot of communication going back and forth, and I could be wrong. Please feel free to correct me. But it seems to me, since we're operating in the similar environment and we're trying to accomplish, in many cases, the same things, that there may be opportunities for communication that are not being taken.
Thank you.
All right, just a heads up. Another thing is homelessness. To what extent would homelessness was not listed in here as an issue or part of your strategic priorities? And I've gotten the message, and maybe this is unfair, that homelessness is not a city issue.
I would say the city engages with the homeless in perhaps a different way than county services has its engagement. So between the library, parks and recreation, so our park system, the fire department, the police department, and how they're managing the use of public space and making sure that that's happening in a way that is what the broad community intends. There's a significant amount of interaction in the city's purview and cost associated with making sure that we are addressing city services in a way that honors that there are people experiencing homelessness that also live in our city, and we have public spaces that people have certain expectations for in how those are going to be utilized. These were directly created by our city council, so that would probably be a question for the elected leaders.
Okay.
But we do not have services and have never had services that directly related to providing services or housing to the homeless. We have a significant amount of resource between our public safety department and our library and park system that works to manage the systems in a way that tries to honor the challenges that our people experiencing homelessness experience, but also the rest of the community reaching out to us, wanting to be able to use public spaces within the city in a way that they feel is appropriate and behaviors that are appropriate in public spaces. So there's a significant amount of interaction that happens between,
Mostly on the public safety side.
I wouldn't say just public safety, it spans parks and recreation, our neighborhood services programming in the community development department. We provide community development block grant funding to different services that provide support to homelessness, but that hasn't been a direct city charge to provide homeless services and human services generally or specifically to the homeless population. And the city council has not provided any direction for the city to engage in that space in a way where we would directly be providing services.
Okay. So in other words, the statement that I've heard is correct, that it's not city business to be dealing with the homeless population.
I would say it slightly differently. The city is very engaged with the homeless population in the way that we provide specific services for the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Okay.
But again, that's probably an elected conversation that needs to continue. There was some conversation about a year and a half, I have no sense of time anymore, a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so, but these strategic priorities happened through the course of 4 or 5 different meetings with the city council, and they actually went through and adjusted some of the wording in this specific slide. So this came from the elected body.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
I have one question. Specific to economic vitality, one thing you spoke to were investments to reduce the time for developers to get approval. Was that staff? Was that process changes? What did you do? That's something I've heard a lot about over the years.
So many things.
So curious what you did there.
It predates me, but part of that was even bringing our building services, our building safety, community development all together, and public works, and we're not all the way there yet, because if you think about the different services that have to be provided, especially if you don't have, even if you do have a pretty close connection to utility services, you need to be going through a process with Rochester Public Utilities for electric and water, through Public Works for grading and stormwater. Grading is probably one of our continued largest challenges, is getting through the grading permit process, because there's a lot of back and forth that needs to happen, and it's directly related to drainage and stormwater runoff. So we're bringing those different groups together, and you have to kind of move way up the food chain in order to get those relationships and those approvals happening in a more symbiotic way. Some of those groups have seen themselves as very separate, but if one of those permitting processes slows down, or they say, well, you're gonna have to pay this large fee, can be a surprise to a developer. But I would say the Unified Development Code made pretty significant changes. So that was about a 7-year planning process to change the land development manual, which I read when I was trying to pick a house here to understand what might be able to be near me, and had to ask a lot of questions. Does this mean it can be 3 stories? But now it's very sort of form-based, so we've heard from developers that are newer to the market, this was such an easy process because I could see this is what your expectation was for this area. I could design my building to that expectation. We've moved a lot of the process before they're ever going through the regulatory piece. So pre-development meetings where you just have an idea and a location, and we're talking through what some of the site challenges might be, like you don't have water, you don't have sewer, you don't have electric, or you do, but you need to work with this neighboring landowner because you're gonna have to come through based on, we don't just add something from a random part of town because we're all gravity, almost all gravity. So those different types of things, some of that staffing, when we're talking about this huge period of investment that we're in from the private sector, we have added 15 staff members that are intended to be for now, and they're all in that space of review. Our most recent addition was an additional wastewater engineer to be able to understand the implications of having that much change in the 22 blocks of the downtown area, and the implications for the system, the capacity of the system, those different types of implications. But just to be able to review it and get those things back and forth, because it's the developer, their engineer, their architect, sometimes they have a sub-engineer, our folks. So getting it back and forth can be a challenge. Most of that is out on our website for people to be able to see, and we report on that monthly, where we are in the number of plan reviews, where they are in review, and how quickly we're turning them around. We also have geographic information systems investments, because obviously if we can kind of know where things physically are going and help that out, then it reduces the amount of time that folks need. But a lot of it really is in the engineering, building permit review, fire systems, the fire marshal's office for those inspections. So it's the reviewing and the inspecting and trying to make sure that we're getting those, all of the projects that are still happening around Rochester, all of the, if you want to do a tenant improvement on West Circle Drive, you still need to make sure that you're going through the process. And in the midst of that, we're reviewing all of those projects that are coming in from Mayo Clinic and some of those other downtown investments. So we're trying to kind of have critical mass to be able to make sure that all of the other projects come through in the same way, while we're also delivering on this big $5 billion investment.
Because everything?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. Did I understand that we're planning a pedestrian subway all the way down Second Street to St. Mary's?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask a detailed question. I don't think it's all the way down. There are different connections that are going to be in place, but the main thing with the rapid transit project, visual always helps me recenter into the project that we're talking about, so sorry if this is making anyone queasy. So what you're going to see is different connections. So there will be a subway across from St. Mary's, but it doesn't exist now. A subway under Second Street.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
so yes. Yeah.
That's a major connection that would be happening, so you can go underneath the street
Yeah.
there, so you're catching, there, it's different catch points along the new link rapid transit system. There will be some new connections, but then with the Mayo Clinic and their expansion across, I don't really have a good map that would show that. Maybe the downtown map. But where they're going to be expanding their, I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. My clicker is different at the city. If you, apologies.
It's all right.
So if you look at sort of that very central point where they're extending west from the Gonda, there will be some different through points. There will be some different subway system, and there also will be some different skyway system. But there will be a through point there in the neighborhood of the church where those two, the two pair streets are basically becoming a turnaround point around the church. So there will be some different connections. I would say the most significant one will be across from St. Mary's to that transportation center there.
Yeah, I just misunderstood the picture, but I see what you're saying. It
Yeah,
goes
I just,
under the street.
Yep.
Not necessarily from like Fifth Street all the way down.
yeah, it doesn't go all the way down, but so your connection, you'll have different connection points
Yeah.
out and then to that link rapid
get it.
transit system.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, we have any?
Someone else probably had that question. You just asked it for them.
I have a question. So we think you got about a 5, maybe 7-year timeline there of major projects, and Bold Forward's $5 billion. What's the valuation of the other projects that are going to be taking place that you presented?
Well, I mean, we just continue to increase. So we were at 600 million and we almost reached 700 million, and that was over the span of 1 year.
Okay.
So the trajectory of that appears that it would continue to be, if you think about City Walk. So some of this depends on when they actually finalize. We have Encore, the, I don't remember what it's actually called. Flats, the bank, the one near Soldiers Field. I just drove past it and saw the sign.
Okay.
But there's a significant market, no TIF required apartment complex that's finalizing and leasing up now across from People's Co-op.
Okay.
So that, for example, would be leasing up. And then we have City Walk, the Girard project. So just things that are in the pipeline. City Walk, Girard project. We've had some interest in some different sites downtown. Some of them I can't talk about. But I would say it would continue on a similar trajectory. I can't guarantee you it's going to go up $100 million a year, but most of the permit revenue that's come in from Mayo Clinic wasn't in that 2024 number. So Mayo Clinic is also still intending to make, it's usually got about 100 million, maybe more, almost $1 billion of investment. That's not all going to show up as like the property value, but they every year have hundreds of millions of dollars of investments that they make. So that will continue, and that is, the Bold Forward project is on top of that.
Sure.
Plus, then you have the different investments that are happening with some of the economic vitality, trying to get like 700 homes done in the course of 3 years instead of having like 70 to 80 a year. So up in the Northwest. And so I would have to get that. I bet we have a prediction from our community development department that we could probably work on and provide. I don't want to
significant.
yeah, it's going to be significant. The
mean,
question is, when does it come online? When do the C of Os come online? And when does all the financing come together for some of these, especially for that multifamily? It's more challenging for them to pull together their capital stack.
Are there semi-firm plans for the 2 high rises you have shown at Mr. Muffler's site?
There's semi-firm plans that we would like to see 2 high-rise. It's unlikely because of all the other investment and construction that happens within that 7-year window. It just seems challenging to try to think the market's going to be able to absorb something like that. Just, we're at the very beginning of what might happen with some of construction contracts and availability for vertical construction. So I don't know that it would be, we also need to continue to work with the legislature for some of the continued planning on that. And the question then is also, is it more marketable to do both sites? So both sides at once, or separate those? And so we just haven't, we still have planning that's going on for that, but it's unlikely that's going to be happening in the like near term. The question is 5 to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 15. I don't know.
We need jobs after 5 or 7 years too.
Right.
How many quote unquote construction workers do you expect will be coming into Rochester over the next 5 years to work on these various projects?
I think it'll be fairly significant, and I've gotten this question, and we're actively underway, and it's working. So I feel like because it's staggered, the type of construction that's happening, like the type of contractor that you're working with when you're doing underground work isn't necessarily the same type of contractor that you're doing when you're building out of the ground. So I think they're going to stagger a bit. I think any given day, there's 2,000 construction workers working, or maybe it's 700, and they think it'll be closer to 2,000. So it could be about double. Now, that's for downtown. If you add in some of the other projects that are across town, I think it depends on how different firms do work. That we know that I believe that Lennar Homes that had an approval on last Monday is planning to be able to do that with workers that they work with out of the city. So some of it will also depend on what does the developer or the individual that's building the project have available to them in order to be able to not just rely on the local market, but also be able to expand the market to bring some regional or statewide. I guess we have to go to multiple states here. We can go to Wisconsin or Iowa.
Sure.
But you know, that near type of opportunity, so far we've been able to, many of our bids have been under. One was very high, and it'll be on next Monday. But a lot of the basic construction things that we've been seeing across the city of Rochester over time haven't changed significantly. So I don't know if people were waiting for this. If other contraction across different markets is bringing up people who thought they were going to be doing other projects. So I can't answer exactly how many people, because I think I've continued to hear 2,000, and so far it doesn't seem like yes, there's a lot of construction activity, but I'm not seeing like construction workers camping at Soldiers Field or something like that. So
well, that kind of brings me, because there's going to be temporary housing needs for those construction workers, and then I got to believe that a lot of those construction workers will like being in Olmsted County and will want to stay in Olmsted County after their work is done, and so that's going to be a good problem to have too. That they're going to be contributing to our economy.
And we've heard a little bit of both, that some people are gonna, like, they're used to driving in
Yeah.
to their work sites, so it sort of depends on, I guess, people's lifestyle.
Sure. And I don't know if I got this, the Sherman project, is that the one north of Mayo Civic Center? Is that going forward or not?
The Civic Center North, they just closed on the bonds that were approved last Friday, and so that provides them a window of opportunity to pull everything together, and I think they have until April, maybe.
Well, they got that long.
Well, again, they have to keep hitting milestones for that to continue to move forward, but that was a big milestone that they closed on those bonds that were approved.
Good.
Can't guarantee anything, but
Sure.
most of the other projects that came through approved planning also aren't done yet, so.
Okay. All right, any further questions?
I do.
Yes.
Just to bring it down to a really micro level and to a big, what I see as a big success in community engagement for the city. So the neighborhood association meetings that I attend, Kutsky Park, which is really heavily impacted by construction, as well as Historic Southwest and Slattery Park, I see that the city really shows up. And they show up at all the meetings, and they keep the constituents and the residents very well informed. They answer difficult, sometimes impossible questions, and just do an excellent job being a liaison between the neighborhood and the city, and aware of how these changes really directly affect the lives of neighborhoods and the residents who live there. And they weather like quite a range of very intense, zealotry, right? Very strong feelings about a lot of these changes. And so I've been just continuously pleased and impressed with the city representatives at neighborhood association meetings. It's really helped me stay directly informed about what's happening week to week, sometimes day to day, in various projects, not just construction, but plans for a greenway connection, or other specialty developments where the downtown and the neighborhoods will interface in a really intentional way. I've just seen it as a success, and I wanted to throw that in the mix.
I will share that immediately with the team, because I sometimes get that after the meeting and they're like, we'll debrief you tomorrow. So they do work, thank you though, because they do work really hard to try to it's very hard to please everyone. It's impossible, really. But to try to make sure people are aware of, like, what is the intention, what are we capable of influencing at this point, and even if it's not something that we can influence at this point, honoring that it's a concern. So I really appreciate that feedback, because that's part of also what we staffed up for, was being able to not just have, a lot of the same staff that's in all of those meetings I mentioned, that if I share the idea of extending outward where the construction is coming, I think there's 12 meetings a week that happen, different versions of those meetings that occur between all of the different partners and stakeholders, so that we can be as informed as possible when we go and have those conversations with community. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Alice. That was very informative.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will leave it to whoever gets to go next. Is it Jennifer?
Yep, you could. All right, next up, receive information and updates summarized in the 2025 state legislative session and outcomes for Olmsted County priorities. Jennifer.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Burquam, Legislative and Policy Analyst for Olmsted County, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. My plan is to share an overview of the outcomes of the 2025 legislative session. I'm going to really kind of dial it into Olmsted County's priorities. Several things passed that will impact counties, and we work closely with our associations like AMC and MICA And there will be information forthcoming from them that is more of a comprehensive view on counties. But with that said, if you have questions or want to meet one-on-one with me, we can definitely dig into other issues as well. And before I begin, I just want to thank our local legislative delegation. They are really great to work with. We can always count on them to champion our projects, carry bills, help advocate. I want to thank the whole legislature. They had a hard job this year with a really evenly divided legislature between the Democrats and Republicans, and they went to a special session, but it didn't take too long, and they were able to achieve a 2-year budget, which was a really hard job. And then, unfortunately, the act of violence that happened, just within a few days after the end of session, that just really put kind of a sad note to the end of something that really should have been celebrated, I feel. And I just want to extend my condolences to all those involved, and I just feel terrible about all of that. And but we're going to move forward and keep doing good work. I also want to thank the county board, all of our county staff, directors, administrators. All of you support me in this work up at the Capitol, and you're the ones testifying, you're the ones meeting with legislators, and our staff are the ones who provide me the details of the information to help advocate. So I just wanted to say a few words of thanks before getting started. But why don't we go ahead with kind of a high-level summary. The legislature did accomplish passing a $66 billion 2-year budget. This is an approximate 8% decrease from the previous biennium. So it took a lot of work to get to that point. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen the budget forecast was not good for this year, and even worse in the upcoming biennium. So they wanted to work to address that looming deficit, and that's kind of why they started making those decreases for the budget. They were successful in passing a $700 million capital investment bill. And one thing that we were watching really closely and doing a lot of advocacy on were county cost shifts or cost shares and cuts. They were not as severe as initially proposed, so we were thankful for that. We can go to the next slide, thank you. This is kind of an overarching slide of all of our 9 county priorities. I'm a little bit of an optimist, and there's some gray area, but I would say we were successful on 4 of the 9. Almost all of them had some kind of activity, but what ended up actually passing was about 4 of them. And so I'll go into detail on each one of these in the next few slides. We'll start with the MRF, which is our top bonding priority, and will be again in 2026. We had a $19.375 million request, and this was to construct and equip the materials recovery facility. This, combined with the $10 million previously appropriated to the county in 2023, would be about 50% of the cost. And with some inflation, that number is going to be a little bit different this year, going into 2026. We did have a hearing in the House Capital Investment Committee, and that went well and was positive. And we met with the Senate chair and ranking Republican member, and that meeting also went well. I mean, I felt like we were making good progress. They just did not include local projects in the bonding bill this year. So we came up short on that one. And then on the integrated resource recovery system, another solid waste project. Our main goal of this project was to kind of lay out the vision for what Olmsted County wants to do with our integrated circular economy around solid waste. So our main focus was on the MRF, and we focused less on this. a good opportunity to kind of get the project into the queue for future years and future investments. And then we can go on to the next project. This is design and engineering work for CASA 3 and CASA 5 proposed interchanges. We were seeking $8 million from the state, 2.4 in trunk highway bonds and 5.6 in general obligation bonds. We had a hearing in both the House and the Senate Transportation and House Capital Investment. But again, it didn't make it across the finish line, but we received positive feedback on that project as well. And then we had another local regional project we're advocating for, the Southeast Regional Groundwater Protection and Soil Health Initiative. I counted this as a success, but more work is needed. The plan is to expand the Olmsted County program to 10 other counties in the region. And we estimated that cost to be around $9 million, which is a very rough estimate. And the program is scalable. So we did get a hearing in the House Agriculture Bill, or the House Agriculture Committee. It was the last hearing possible before they closed up the committee and started putting their omnibus bills together. And we were thankful on the House side that we had, at that time, I think it was $100,000 in the bill for a study of the program. And while it wasn't funding to actually implement the program in 10 other counties, I think it was a positive step that they like the program. They want to learn more about it. As mentioned earlier, it was a difficult budget year. So the Ag Committee didn't have a huge budget. It would be very difficult to fund a $9 million project. But I think the plan is to learn more about it and hopefully start laying the groundwork for future funding opportunities. And ultimately, what ended up passing was $75,000 to MDA to do that study. In the meantime, Skip has been working hard, and we've been working together to try to find other funding opportunities. So Skip presented to the Clean Water Council in April to start sharing with them what we'd like to do. They are the ones who make recommendations for how to spend clean water funded dollars out of the legacy fund. And then Skip also presented to the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, known as LCCMR. That went well. That they make recommendations on spending like the lottery money or the environmental trust fund dollars. So kind of another special revenue source for environmental purposes. So we're waiting to hear more final details on that, but we're just going to keep working and keep trying to find ways to fund that program. We can go on to the next item, the Graham Park Exhibition Center construction materials and equipment sales tax exemption. Again, we had hearings in both the House and the Senate. They had, I don't know how many individual projects they heard relating to these, hundreds probably. The tax bill didn't have the funding available to be funding projects like this, so I don't believe there were any local sales tax exemption projects in the tax bill. And it would be an approximate $1 million savings to the county on the exhibition center. And then I talked about the LCCMR, the Environmental Trust Fund. Carlin Ziegler had applied the previous year for funding to improve Lake Zumbro Park, and she was successful in getting that funding recommended, but then it still had to pass the legislature to actually make it official, and that did pass this session, so that was good news, and I think they're moving forward to get started on that project. And then mental health was another priority of the county. The previous ones I mentioned, priorities were kind of specific just to Olmsted County or the region. These are more statewide priorities that are coming up next. Regarding mental health, we mainly aligned with the Association of Minnesota Counties and MICA. on most of these specific things, but a few of them we were leading on. So I also counted this as a success because the first bullet is just probably the most important part of the priority, and that relates to increased access to state-operated mental health beds. And there was a $75 million appropriation for a 50-bed expansion at the Anoka Metro Regional Treatment. I guess it should be center, not facility. It's AMRTC, if you've seen that acronym. It was, I believe it was $55 million in the bonding bill and $20 million in the Human Services bill, plus an additional $34 million in fiscal year 29 to operate that facility. And given we were in a really tough budget year, I think that was it showed that there was strong prioritization of that issue. The issue relating to eliminating the county cost share when an individual may not require hospitalization, but is awaiting bed for a treatment at another state-operated facility, that did not continue. So it was in place in law for 2 years, and it was supposed to sunset, and they let it sunset, so that's not going to continue. Basically, I think the main cost drivers are like if someone is at the AMRTC facility and they don't need to be there anymore, but there isn't an appropriate bed for them, counties are responsible for paying those costs. The next issue relates to establishing and funding a children's mental health initiative modeled after the adult mental health initiative. And this didn't get as much traction this session as I think we were hoping to, just given the tight budget year and a lot of other issues coming up in human services. The fourth bullet is establishing and funding a Medicaid benefit for children's crisis stabilization services. We put this on the list just to kind of keep it top of mind with our local legislators. We had worked on it really hard in the previous session, and the legislature did pass some language last session that requires a study back to the legislature in 2025. And that is supposed to inform the legislature, like, what would this Medicaid benefit look like? Potentially, how much would it cost? Those kind of things. And that relates to the services that we provide for youth and children at the CIRC. So it's something that Olmsted County was really leading on, but now other counties are interested in that as well because they're looking at some youth facilities. And then the final issue relates to supporting initiatives that are recommended by the Regional County Youth Placement Working Group. This is something that Hennepin County has pulled together a working group of other counties, mainly in the metro area, but Olmsted County is participating as well, and looking at youth placements and trying to find ways to better serve our youth. And so those bills had hearings, but it cost a lot of money, so those did not get funded this session. But the group, it sounds like the group just met recently. They're looking at some policy changes potentially to move forward in the upcoming session. And I think if there are opportunities for funding, we'll keep working together and keep seeing what we may be able to accomplish together on that. And then human services technology improvements, we call it modernization. This has been an Olmsted County priority and a county priority for many, many years. SSIS, the Social Service Information System improvements have kind of been getting traction the last few years, and so they made a pretty big investment in that this session at $35 million. That added to the $10 million appropriated last session and a federal match. The belief is that that'll be enough money to overhaul the SSIS system. So we're hopeful that will turn out well, but there's still a lot of needs in the human service system modernization area. Language also passed. It was in the bill last year too, but ensuring that the state is working with counties as they develop these systems so that we can try to make them work, for both sides as best as possible. And then our final legislative priority for this year related to a statewide funding source for cleaning up tax forfeiture properties. And the photo there is of our Haverhill Township site, those are probably gone by now, which is great news. We had success last session in getting a direct appropriation for that, but we felt that there's need statewide and potentially more need in our own county even. Again, I feel like a broken record, but it wasn't a good year to be asking for new spending. And so there was a bill introduced, but it really didn't get much traction as far as a hearing and having a good chance of passing this year. But I think it's something that is important to a lot of counties, and we'll keep working on it. All right, so the next couple slides are issues that weren't necessarily on our priority list, but still things that we spent significant time on. And that was relating to the cost shifts, shares, and cuts that you may recall were introduced in the governor's budget early in session. And then even like House and Senate Human Services proposals or bills also had some pretty big cuts or cost shifts to counties when they first came out. So the good news is that the most concerning cost shares did not pass. And those were the waiver rate exceptions in the House bill and a 5% waiver residential services cost share, which I think was in the governor's proposal. And in place of these larger dollar amount shifts, they established a long-term services and supports advisory council, and their job is to identify $177.542 million in savings through future reforms. And if the reforms or savings are not realized by December 2026, there will be a county cost share for counties to pay for the residential services of about $90 million. So important to keep that in mind as we go forward. And I believe that counties will have representation on this advisory council. I don't know how many or who, but I think AMC will be coordinating that. And then there were additional shifts and shares that we were watching that did not pass. The Minnesota Sex Offender Program county cost of care increase, the Behavioral Health Fund county cost share increase, a new withdrawal management of county financial responsibility obligation. There were some other cost shifts that did pass, so that would be where counties are going to be taking on more costs. So those include eliminating the county allocation for administering the Behavioral Health Fund. The state is taking on responsibility for eligibility appeals for these funds. And then there's also going to be a new county competency attainment cost of care for individuals treated at AMRTC. And there's a new requirement that replaces the MnChoice's time study reimbursement with a flat rate reimbursement. And the state booked $9 million for this last bullet point, so we think that it could potentially be counties that end up making up that $9 million. All right, next slide, please. These are the county cost shifts that we were watching in the taxes area. So initially, the Senate bill had some pretty deep cuts to county program aid and local government aids and those types of programs. PILT, buffer aid, statewide affordable housing aid, homeless prevention aid was even included toward the end. Thankfully, none of those passed. They made up the amounts that they had to through an increased cannabis gross receipts sales tax. So it increased from 10 to 15%. And then they also repealed a portion of a sales tax for exemption for data centers. There was a 50% reduction in AIS aid, aquatic invasive species, and a 10% reduction to the Sustainable Forest Initiative Act, which are both effective in fiscal year 28. I don't believe we have too much significant funding in either of those programs. And then You may recall that they repealed the local cannabis aid account that they started the year the cannabis bill passed. So we won't be getting that. Okay, next slide, please. Another issue that we spent a lot of time on is the shotgun use area. We've been working on this for a few years, or involved in it. The repeal did pass this session. You'll see on the map, it's kind of small and hard to see, but that yellow line, that north of that, all firearms, for the most part, all firearms are legal during the deer hunting season. South of that, it's shotgun only during the deer hunt. So that line is going to go away. They passed language with that repeal that allows counties currently south of that line or in the shotgun use area, we can adopt our own ordinance to limit the type of firearms that may be used to hunt deer within the county. And it'll be effective January 1st of 2026. That's when the law goes into place, so it would be for like the 2026 deer hunting season. And I should say, feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions, or we can hold them till the end too. The next slide, just a quick overview of the bonding bill. Again, it was $700 million. Few to no local projects. One area that we tend to watch a lot that's important to us in District 6 is $42 million for the local road improvement program, $20 million for the local bridge replacement program, and $5 million for the local road wetland replacement program. I already mentioned the $55 million for the Miller Building expansion at AMRTC. And then there was over $30 million for local housing programs in the bonding bill. You can kind of see how they're broken out there. And I would also mention that the omnibus housing bill also had significant funding for housing infrastructure bonds. All right, other issues. One thing you may already all be aware, but one thing for local boards, restrictions were lifted on remote participation. So now elected officials will be able to attend meetings remotely without disclosing your location or opening that location to the public. You don't need a doctor's note required to attend remotely, and it removes the caps on the frequency a member attends remotely. Now, I think local government units of government can still kind of set your own policies and things like that, but these restrictions in the state law have been relaxed or lifted. Another issue I want to mention is simplifications to the min choices assessments. That's one issue that we weighed in on both at the state and federal level. Those changes were included in the Human Services Bill, so it allows for verbal attestation rather than a new assessment when there is an agreement that an individual's condition hasn't changed from the previous year. So you don't have to do a min choices every single year if their condition hasn't changed, as long as the individual agrees with that. So I think we can move on to the next slide. I wrote these slides for the last board meeting, which was before the reconciliation bill had passed, so I don't really have anything on that here, but I'll just say that we're analyzing the bill for impacts and, working with our county associations and looking to see how that bill will impact Olmsted County. Some other things that we've been working on throughout the spring, we submitted 2 projects for the congressionally directed spending process. We submitted a $5 million project for CASA 3 and 5 to the federal, or to our members of Congress, Finstead, Klobuchar, and Smith. And I believe, and then we also submitted the Regional Materials Recovery Facility, part of that project, in the amount of $4.897 million to the 2 senators. And I believe we've heard from all 3 of them that both projects are moving forward in the process. And we're hopeful to learn soon if they do make it into appropriation bills. So we'll keep watching that over the summer. And then in the interim, we are continuing to refine our bonding projects and looking for other funding opportunities. We're beginning to work on the 2026 legislative priorities. We're preparing for the fall AMC Policy Conference. That's in early September. And then after that, I'm anticipating we'll probably do some kind of a legislative work session with the full board to bring everybody up to speed on kind of what we're looking at for priorities in 2026, with adoption of the priorities most likely late November or early December. So I think that's all I have for you tonight, but I want to thank you again for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great.
No, I don't have a question, but I want to thank Jennifer for watching all this stuff. She's very knowledgeable. She's one of the better ones in the state that know about the legislative process. And she knows everybody in the legislature. I'm always impressed every time we go to a meeting that she has wonderful contacts that she uses, which is very helpful for Olmsted County. So thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I appreciate your kind words.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I would just echo those sentiments. I don't need to repeat it, but absolutely, I've had the opportunity to prepare for testimony a couple times, and you always give me lots of great information so that we're fully prepared. And yeah, as you walk through the buildings in St. Paul, the relationship that you have obviously bring tremendous value to us in Olmsted County. So I appreciate your professionalism and the way you're representing us in St. Paul.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rossman.
Just a quick question regarding, and this is not on your agenda necessarily. I'm more curious than anything else, and that is the Family and Medical Leave Act, I believe, goes into effect on January 1st in 2026. Were there any provisions that or changes that were made that might affect small businesses?
Looking at Julian, I know that they were talking about them,
Right.
but I don't believe anything too significant passed. There might have been was there a 1% reduction to the fees? I'll have to look into
I
that
don't
and
know.
get back to you.
I didn't expect you to know it off.
Yeah.
Well, I had hoped, but anyway. And then one other thing is, Councilman Palmer had put forward a bonding proposal for a mental health facility in Olmsted County, and essentially placed it on county property, which you may be aware of. Is that something that will be a priority moving forward, or something that you've been working with the city on? I should have asked Ms. Zelms while she was here as well.
I have not had a conversation with the city on that, but I did hear that he mentioned it. I guess I've talked to my counterpart at the city, and so she did mention it too. I think Commissioner Senja might have some ideas on that, and
He certainly does.
it might come up at the next retreat. Is that right? Or I think he was planning to bring something forward. So more discussion on that. I don't think we're ready to commit to anything at this point, but I think it is a topic that's being discussed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Okay. I think we're on to board and committee reports. Let's start with that. Bob, you have anything?
Oh, no, nothing to report.
Okay, Brian. Michelle.
I do. Two things from Extension Committee, which Commissioner Miller and I represent the board on. The first one being that with the federal reconciliation bill that was passed, the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Education Program will be no more. We do have educators employed by Extension here in Olmsted County that provide education to SNAP participants, but as of late August, they will be receiving termination notices, and those positions will no longer exist across the state. So if you talk to anyone who interacts with SNAP participants, know that those education programs will be gone. On a much brighter note, starting on Tuesday, the 22nd, Olmsted County Fair. The hundreds of 4-Hers in Olmsted County who work really 9 to 12 months a year in putting projects together, et cetera, that is their chance to showcase them. So I would invite all of you to attend the fair, pet a goat, watch the pig show. There's all kinds of incredible exhibits, all of the beyond the animal exhibits, which I'm very fond of, but tremendous talent and is showcased during that time at the county fair. And 4-Hers love to talk to people about their exhibits and what they've learned in developing those projects. So I hope that you all have a chance to get out to the fair and experience that in 2 weeks. And then one other quick note, I represent the board on AMC's solid waste work group. We've met 3 times over the last couple of months. Tony Hill also represents us from a staff perspective. And we've had a lot of presentations as you can imagine, across all of the counties represented on that work group. We have very diverse solid waste systems in place. We're meeting next week in the metro area, doing a couple tours of facilities, but then also meeting and are going to try to align along an action plan and bring all of those diverse perspectives around a couple of topics that AMC can really guide us through as a group in addressing over the next, we haven't really set a timeline, but I think that group will probably be in place for about a year. But as we continue those discussions, if there's anything that I need to bring back to you all to discuss that we need to take to the group, et cetera, and Tony will continue to participate. But it's been eye-opening to just see all the different perspectives around solid waste around the state and figure out how AMC helps to align us all to make an impact in that space as we move forward.
Thank you. Greg?
Well, Olmsted County, Chesterwoods Park celebrated an anniversary. Was it 30 years? 30 years. And the tremendous changes that Chesterwood has taken, we have a very good park and trail system. We've always had very good park superintendents and managers, but it's really been expanded and it's used by people in the Olmsted County as well as outside of Olmsted County. And this last weekend when I was out there, I think all the campsites were filled. And so congratulations to the people that manages our park, really good, and to the staff that put on a very nice anniversary.
Thank you. Laurel?
No reports.
Okay. All right. Today, instead of sharing a quote, I'm going to share one of my friend's standard responses to being asked how he is doing, and he would say, thankful and blessed. The friend I'm referring to is Bob Bardwell. In 1973, Bob, a former college wrestler from Stewartville, Minnesota, was injured in a heavy equipment construction accident. It was a hot day in July, much like today. His family's construction business was finishing building the high school track in Plainview. And while Bob was replacing a snapped cable on an excavator, a co-worker accidentally pushed the lever in the wrong direction, and the bucket fell on Bob, crushing his ribs, collapsing his lungs, and severing his spinal cord. He's been a paraplegic ever since. For several years, Bob did allow this tragedy to define him. He became despondent and depressed and eventually broke up his marriage. One day he decided he had enough, and as Bob would say, the greatest destroyer of a bright future is dwelling on the past. He decided he would live his life serving others. So in 1976, he started Ironwood Springs Christian Ranch in High Forest Township. Ironwood Springs has grown to become our nation's largest wheelchair sports camp. Annually, over 16,000 people benefit from being at his 120-acre ranch. In addition, through the Miracle Lodge that he constructed on site, he has offered free retreats for military couples, camps for those who have autism, and camps for military families. Bob's generosity and positivity has provided healing to hundreds of thousands of people over the 49 years it's been in existence. Bob has also proven to be a very competitive athlete, competing in over 100 wheelchair marathons, winning the Chicago Marathon once, Grandma's Marathon once, and the Twin Cities Marathon 3 times. He has raced for over 10,000 miles over his career. Over those years, Bob has also met the love of his life, Jody, and they had 4 daughters together. Those daughters have since blessed them with 6 grandchildren. Last week, Bob called me from hospice, convinced and excited that he will very soon meet his maker. There will be no coming back from this latest bout of cancer. From his bed, he is literally taking the time to call hundreds of contractors and countless volunteers who have helped Ironwood Springs reach its goals over the years. And once again, he demonstrates what thankful and blessed truly means. I know it's not traditional to do so, but I thought it appropriate that I take this time to recognize what Bob has done for our community and hope you keep him in your thoughts in the days ahead. Thank you. That will entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.